Hey, what's going on, everybody? High five. Welcome to Auto Mastery University weekly sales training. Today's date is March. I have to look it up. Isn't that crazy? Today's date is March 26th, the day after my wife's birthday. So it is a Wednesday as we're going live here, but I want to talk today about tonality. I know it doesn't sound sexy, but it's so powerful. I mean, think about this. If you and I went to any sales training any time in our lives, we've heard about a science called neuro-linguistic programming. What? What's neuro-linguistic programming? Neuro is the brain, linguistics is communication, programming, putting the two together. And what we learned about neuro-linguistic programming is rapport is everything. If you and I can build rapport, we can lead people to maybe a state of trust and a state of certainty, and it leads to hopefully the sale. And how do we build rapport? Well, we build rapport with mirroring and matching, paying attention to their body language, paying attention to the tone they use, pay attention to the words they use, and not just paying attention, but using similar words, not mimicking them, but mirroring them. Now, what we also learned in neuro linguistic programming, say that 22 times, is that there's a piece called pace, pace, lead. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's just take a simple up. You meet them on the showroom floor, and they're a lot less, let's say, high energy than you are. Maybe they're what we call a C on the personality scale, where they're very deliberate and they're very stoic. And if you come out like I do as a swirling dervish, and you're crazy and you're high energy and you're talking fast and you're saying, follow me, you're gonna break immediate rapport with these people. So what you and I want to do, if you think about it, is we want to build certainty throughout the process. We want to build trust throughout the process. Those two things are absolutely critical, right? So again, how do we do it? I'm going to tell you a quick story. Years ago, I worked at a place called Kistler Ford in Toledo, Ohio. I actually had been in the car business previous to working at Kistler, but I wasn't very good. And this particular store, I started and I was just so excited. It was a big Ford store. The owner had given me uh, confidence because he told me, man, I think you're going to be great at this. He was a friend of my father's. And I was having so much fun. And every day I was like on fire. I'm running to customers. I'd run to go get keys. I'd run back to the car and I'd pull it out. And I was just on fire. And I loved what I was doing. I was talking fast. I wasn't listening very well, though. But people loved my energy. And I was a young kid and they just loved being around me. I was just being me. And I ended up getting salesman of the month the first month there. The next month, it was about fall. It wasn't about fall, it was fall. And a group of people came into the dealership. This was farm country in Toledo, Ohio. And a group of farmers came throughout the month to buy trucks. And they were a little bit different than me. I'd go out there and say, welcome to Just Look Forward. And they'd say, as they spit out their juice, they'd say, we're looking for a truck, boy. And I'd say, great, follow me. And they wouldn't follow. Eventually, there just wasn't any rapport. And I'm being a little silly, but that was really the case. And I got off to a terrible start. And I went to Eddie DeLuca, one of my fellow salespeople, and I said, Eddie, what's going on, man? Everything I did last month worked great. Everything I'm doing this month doesn't work at all. And he said, you're not paying attention. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're not paying attention to your customers. He said, the problem is that you've got this incredible energy. You're young and you're enthusiastic and you're loud and you walk fast and talk fast and you don't listen very well. And he said, you're dealing with a group of people that are totally different than that. You need to adjust. You need to mirror their tone, their pace, and their words and their body language. And I thought, oh, see, I wasn't pacing them. I was trying to get them to pace me, and it wasn't working. And so I started from that day, it wasn't the middle of the month, it was about a weekend. And I started to slow it down. I started to pay attention to my clients. I started using words they used and tone that they used. And what happened was that we started getting connection. Now, I had a really good month. It wasn't great, but it was really good. And at the end of the month, I went up to Eddie and I said, Eddie, how'd I do? He said, it's fine, but you're missing a point. He said, I'm really glad that you adjusted to your client. You're paying attention, you're mirroring them. But he said, the problem is you're not then taking over. I said, what do you mean? He says, there's this thing called pace, lead. I said, what's that? See, I didn't have any sales training there. Eddie was my sales trainer right on the floor. I said, what do you mean? He said, you mirror them, you match them. In other words, you're paying attention to the words and tone and body style and body language. It's not your necessarily the way you are, you're just mirroring them. And then once you have rapport, once you feel that connection, once you know that you've got a connection with your client, you can start to pick it up because they're connected with you. There's a certainty about you. And he said now they've got a little bit of trust in you. And then you can lead them by you can pick up the pace. Maybe you talk a little bit faster because that's your normal, but you're pacing them, you're leading them now, right? So it's pace, mirror them, and then lead and create the energy with your maybe walking a little bit faster or talking a little bit faster. But you have to always pay attention because you might be in rapport, and then you might lead them a bit, and then you break rapport. Now you got to go back to pacing again. So you're always trying to pay attention to their tone, their body language, and their words to make sure that you're connecting with them. And then you're going to lead them. When you feel you're breaking that rapport, then you got to go back and pace them again. Does that make sense? So today I want to talk about 7 key tonalities. We talked about a couple of them last time we got together, and I want to talk about how important that is. So we're going to pull it up here, and I'm going to talk to you about exactly that, those 7 key tonalities and the use of varying tonalities. So keep this in mind. The tonality, as it says on the screen, that you use for each word and phrase should fit the message and the emotion that you want to convey to the mind of the buyer. In other words, you wouldn't say to them, man, that's ugly, isn't it? You might say it that way, but you wouldn't say it like this. You wouldn't say it's ugly with enthusiasm. Right? You would use enthusiasm in key places. Does that make sense? Each tonality allows you to customize the energy of the message. So you're customizing it to evoke or awaken whatever emotion you want your prospect to experience. Remember, we've talked about the conscious and the unconscious. This is our opportunity for us to connect with their other than conscious mind. This is our opportunity. I want to show you on the screen of what I'm talking about here. This is our opportunity for us to be spreading the message. See, you're the originator, and you need to make rapport with your client through what? Words, tone, body language, as it says on the screen, your speech, your tonality, certain gestures, maybe images, maybe different ideas, definitely different words, obviously body language too. And we'll talk about all that delivery system later, but you're speaking to their conscious, and they're conscious, subconsciously, they're saying to themselves, I really like this person. And because of that, I really trust this person. And because of that, every time that you give them any suggestion based, obviously after you figured out what they want, when you give them a suggestion, again, they trust you more. So let's go back to those tonalities and talk about which one, the piece about that and how important that is. Okay. So I'm going to talk about, and again, I'm going to review a little bit from last time, but we're going to use again varying tonalities throughout this. And one of those is what's called the reasonable person. And I do this one a lot, and it can be used at various times. And what that means for you to have an understanding of what reasonable person is, you're dealing with an adult, if that makes sense. You're reasonable, they're reasonable. And these are just 2 adults having a conversation. And I want you to think about that when you're with them. It's not that you're up here, they're down here. It's not either. It's not the other one either. It's not that they're up here and you're down here. You're two people having a reasonable conversation. So, for example, when you first meet them, you might be on the lot and you find out his name's Bob and Bob's looking for a Tundra long bed. Hey, Bob, it's a little bit cold out here. Let's do this. Let me bring you on inside. I'm going to get you a cup of coffee if you like, and then I'm going to ask you a couple questions. And that will allow me to then figure out where that truck is and either pull it up or you and I can walk and find it. Does that sound clear enough? Now, the key one there, and we talked about this a lot last time, fair enough. Does that make sense? Sound fair enough? It's non-threatening. It's two people having a reasonable conversation. I mean, think about it at home with your kids. Hey, Jimmy, I know you want to go to the ball game, and we're going to do that. You and I, what we're going to do is work together to get the garage clean, so we don't have to do it tomorrow when the ball game is. So let's get it done together, and then tomorrow, when it's time to go, we will get there early and see batting practice. Sound fair enough? Now, again, two reasonable people. I know I said adult conversation, but you're having an adult conversation with whoever that person is. Okay. So that's one way to use reasonable person. And I love this fair enough, sound fair enough. It could be when you're in the middle of a write-up. You've gotten a commitment and you say, now I'm going to go talk to my manager, going to propose everything that you told me to propose, and I'll get some information from him. Sound fair enough? Can I get you Coke or coffee? Be right back. So that sound fair enough is really powerful. All right. The next one, I love this one. And again, you might use it various times. It's just a way for you to set the stage for the conversation. For example, let's say that you met somebody on the lot. Again, they're looking for a new Tundra, right? I'll be glad to help you with that. If it's okay with you, let's go ahead and come inside. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. And then when we get inside, I'll get you Coke or coffee or something so that you can again feel comfortable doing this process. Sound fair enough? Follow me. You bring them inside. Folks, what's in front of me here is what's called a guest sheet. And this guest sheet will give me some directives of what you're looking for. Let me ask you a few questions. And you go into that. Just adult conversation. Does that make sense? Okay, good. The next one I really love this one in a phone call when you're calling somebody back. It's called the man of mystery. Now, for you ladies watching this, I'm calling him woman of mystery too. But in the old days, long, long time ago, they used to have movies where they would have somebody lurking in the alleyway, maybe with a trench coat on, a raincoat, and a, and a, and a hat on, and they'd be that man of mystery. They'd be that person that we just weren't sure what they were doing, but they were lurking, right? There was a different tonality. Now think about this. You're calling someone back. Maybe you've never talked to them before. Maybe you went through your CRM and you found somebody with a vehicle that you were interested in maybe putting a bid on. And maybe that vehicle that they have can be replaced for a lower payment. So it could be some revenue radar or data mining tool. Maybe that's the call. You call them back and you say, like this. This is using the man of mystery tonality. Is Bill there? Yeah, it's Bill. Bill? My name is Bart. I'm one of the customer service representatives at Billy Bob Toyota. And the reason for the call, you drop your voice a little bit like it's a secret. The reason for the call is we had somebody that actually saw a vehicle like yours that they were interested in. It wasn't our vehicle. And they want to buy a vehicle just like yours. And I did some homework and I found yours. And they would like to make a bid on that. Now, keeping it quiet, make it kind of a mystery. You're telling a little secret that nobody else knows. Guess what happens to their other than conscious? They're leaning in, they're paying attention. When you can move tonality around, whether volume or pace, it gets them to indeed pay attention. And when they pay attention, it's going to their subconscious and you're building trust. So again, I just want to review these two a minute. Reasonable man, just adult conversation. I'm going to get you this information. Sound fair? Sound reasonable? Sound fair enough? Right. We're sitting down. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Just adult conversation. You're calling them on the phone, maybe about a data mining tool or maybe a vehicle that you saw that you want to buy, or you want to find out if they want to replace it. Usually, when I'm calling somebody back in a data mining tool, I don't call them and say, "Hey, you can get a brand new Tundra for close to same payment as your 3-year-old Tacoma. Would you be interested in hearing about that?" I don't say that. I call them and I use this man of mystery tonality. Is Bob there? Hey, Bob, my name's Bart. I'm customer service representative for Billy Bob Toyota. And the reason for the call, and when you say that, you just drop your voice. The reason for the call is someone saw a vehicle like yours that they're interested in. I did the research and I believe they would buy your vehicle. Are you interested in hearing more? So you're just getting them to pay attention to you. Does that make sense? Okay, great job. Let's look at another one while we hang out here a little bit. The next one, which we have not talked about yet, is absolute certainty tonality. So we've talked about reasonable man, reasonable person, man of mystery. Absolute certainty, confidence. Customer says, I'm just not sure. Bob, just give me one shot. And I'm believing that that could change everything. I think you're really going to be happy with that. You're saying it with certainty. You're saying that you're definitely, you're definitely sure about this. And it could be a whole different tone. Maybe when you first met them, they were more, maybe a little quieter. You used that tone. And then after a bit, you felt more comfortable to start leading them more in your personality. And then maybe you mirrored them when you lost rapport, you started mirroring them again with tone and body language and words. Now, somewhere along the line, you're saying to them with certainty, maybe more toward the close, with certainty. See, remember we talked about certainty? We talked about why don't people buy? Because they're not certain. So you, Mr. and Mrs. Salesperson, are going to project certainty in this time. Not always, because that would be annoying, but at certain moments, you're in that spot where maybe they're just not sure. Bob, just give me one shot. I think this could change everything for you. I'm going to go into my boss and I'm going to say, this is what we got and what we're offering. Does it sound fair enough? Now, look at, I'm using the reasonable man with absolute certainty. You can use different tonalities. As you can see on the screen, Jimmy, just based on what you told me, you are definitely a perfect fit for this vehicle. This will meet every one of your needs for your kids towing the boat, using for work. Let's go ahead and get this done. Fair enough? And again, I like using fair enough quite often in different tones. Sometimes it's just reasonable man. Sometimes it's with absolute certainty. Joan, you're definitely in the perfect spot at the perfect time. We've got somebody that's definitely interested in your vehicle. Let's go ahead and get this done. Fair enough? So again, absolute certainty. The next one is more of a curious. I read a book once that that I read actually, I listened to. It's really easy listen from Phoenix to Atlanta. And that book was the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions. And it said, don't be judgmental, be curious. You and I get if we're going to really be good at what we do, we really have to be good at asking questions. I'm a podcaster and in my podcast, I find sometimes I've got absolute certainty about my about I'm trying to be direct and give information to the audience. And then other times I'm with my clients and I just really, really want to know. Now, one of the things that you and I do a lot in terms of a greeting, whether it's on the phone or on the lot, is we say, "How you doing today?" Now, I have to tell you that is could be wasted time unless you say it like you really mean it. So let's do it in terms of a phone call. Okay. Maybe it's that same call that you're making off the data mining tool. You're calling somebody about their trade and you want to see if they'll trade it. Maybe you've got somebody interested in a trade like theirs, or you at least want your used car manager to look at their car so they end up buying another one, whatever the case may be. So this is the when you would use that. Is Bob there? Hey, it's Bob. Bob, this is Bart, and I'm the customer relations person at Billy Bob Toyota. How's it going today? Now, we're going to talk about different tones, but I just want to hang in here on this one. I really, when you call somebody on the phone, it's really, really important to make it sound like they know who you are. So I'm going to redo that tone for a minute. We'll talk about it at another time, but I want to do this again. It's Bob there. It's Bob. Hey, Bob. This is Bart over at Billy Bob Toyota. And it makes it sound like he knows who you are. See, there are going to be many times when you're calling somebody 2 days down the line, or hopefully a day down the line, if they're a customer that came in and left. Hopefully it's within 6 hours from the time they left, maybe even sooner. But hopefully you're calling them back. And when you call them back, they know who you are. You just saw them a day ago. So that tone would be, is Bob there? Bob, this is Bob. Hey Bob, it's Bart over at Billy Bob Toyota. Oh, hi Bart. He already knows you. It's been 6 hours. But what I'm saying is, I want to use that same tone, even if I've never met them. So again, if it's from our data mining tool where we've got an idea that they can get a new vehicle for lesser payment, it might sound like this. Is Bob there? Yeah, it's Bob. Hi, Bob. It's Bart over at Billy Bob Toilet. How's it going today? Now, when you ask him how's it going today, like you really care. Don't make it a how's it going, right? You've got to put certainty into that. Also, maybe you're on the phone with somebody and they say in that conversation they're talking about their business. They're talking about what they do in their business. Maybe it just popped up in the conversation, either on the lot, maybe on the phone, whatever. But a good, I really want to know tonality would be. So tell me about your business. How long have you been doing that? What was what was the reason you got into that business? How's it been going for you? You don't have to spend an hour on it, but act like you really want to know. Talk about building rapport. People don't want to know how much you know. They want to know how much you care, right? So again, we've talked about man of mystery. We've talked about absolute certainty. And here's what I want to do to land this tonight. Different combinations establish instant rapport. I'll never forget, I was doing a sales meeting or a manager's meeting in Columbia, Missouri. And in the meeting, it was early in the morning, and I knew these folks. I really liked them. I think we've talked about this before. We had a great connection, and yet they were all yawning and they were just staring at me with glass eyes. They needed more caffeine. And I realized I'm talking monotone. I was on fire. I was with absolute certainty. I was bringing it, man. I was energetic. And I was putting them to sleep. And I thought, how can you put them to sleep with all this energy? And then I changed my tone. And when I changed my tone, they started having to listen to me differently. And it kind of woke them up. And anytime I lost rapport, I would change the tone. If I got a little bit too sleepy, I would pick it up and talk with more absolute certainty. So here's what we know. The death of a salesperson is sameness, Sameness. So it's really important through your various tonalities to get your customer to click, click, click and build rapport with you. And what's happening is you change your tonalities, you're getting little minor micro agreements with your clients. In other words, they're connecting with you. They're connecting with you. They're connecting with you. Trust and certainty are being built. Sometimes you don't even know that's happening. Although, if you're really good at this, you can tell. Again, with rapport, you can always tell when you don't have it, right? I mean, really, if you're paying attention, but you can start seeing, oh, that's a that's a minor micro agreement. And that's what you and I are trying to get. Micro agreements throughout the conversation. Why? Because it keeps the conversation interesting and engaging. So I just want to repeat what we've talked about before. Varying tonalities, reasonable man. Sound fair enough? Let me ask you a few questions. Adult conversation. Man of mystery. Huh? The reason I'm calling is I think I've got somebody that wants to buy your truck. Like it's a secret. You're not telling anybody else about it. You don't want anybody else to hear it. That tonality is really powerful. Another one, absolute certainty. Jimmy, just give me one shot. I believe this will change your life. I'm believing that you'll be really happy with me. I'm going to present these numbers that you and I want to present, and then I'm going to tell them what you want to pay. Sound fair enough? So it might be that last shot close. Let me give it one more shot. I know we've been going back and forth. Let me give it one more shot. I'm believing that we got something here with certainty. And then when you find that perfect car for Joni, based on what you told me, that you need room for the kiddos and you need room to tow that camper and that you guys need room to the store stuff in the back, this is definitely a perfect fit for you guys. Boom. Definitely being a big part of absolute certainty. And there's that I really want to know tonality. You're curious, not judgmental. How's it going today? With sincerity. And when you're talking about maybe their family, maybe their business, maybe the last car they bought. So tell me about your family. How many kids do you have? Wow. So you really care. You really want to know. Right on. And then we said combinations. You got to do different. You're going to mix these, as I did when I talked about absolute certainty and reasonable person. You're going to mix them up. Various tonalities cause the prospect on a subconscious basis to start trusting you and connecting with you. And this keeps that conversation interesting and engaging. You guys killed it today. Fantastic job. Just these. You've got what? Four of them to practice, 4 or 5 of them to practice. Just practice them a little bit this week and let's get good at them. Practice that reasonable man when you're with the customer, reasonable person. The man of mystery when you're on a phone call. Practice that one. Then practice your absolute certainty. And that curious piece, I really want to know. You're asking questions with sincerity. Good job. Way to go. We'll talk to you guys next time.